Hello to another session. Great that you tune in or watch this recording. Um, it's another session about agility. And if you know me, for me, agility is more than just a few agile methods or agile frameworks. Agility is, some people would call it leadership or high performance in companies, product management. It's everything because I think that belongs together. It's just agility is the term that people put on me, and so I use that. I accept that because I think there are great ideas. And today I want to talk about planning. I just put out a post in the Agile group on planning, and I wrote an article for my newsletter. You can get it here, by the way. That will go out next week or the week after about planning and planning the plan or finalizing the plan. Because I hear that phrase so often, finalizing the plan. We have to finally finalize the plan. And to me, finalizing the plan is an oxymoron. It's you can't. I mean, it's a plan. If you can never finalize it because reality will change. You have to constantly adapt your plan. You can never finalize a plan. You can have a certain draft state and then you adapt that, but it can never be final. If your goal is to finalize the plan, and let me hide the banner for the newsletter here. If you want to finalize the plan, if that's really your goal, you will never start. And maybe some of you recognize that from the corporate life especially, that you spend so much time planning. You have a great idea for features, for a product enhancement, for a project, and you cannot start right away. And it's okay to not just jump to the solution right away, to think about how you want to approach it for some time. But most corporations I see, and just help me understand if that's the same for you, they really overdo it with planning. They spend weeks, months, sometimes years with hundreds of people planning, finalizing the plan, synchronizing the plan with all the people affected, bouncing it with them, making sure they don't forget anyone, getting all the details right so that they don't surprised when something happens, trying to optimize the plan and rework the plan. And it's ridiculous, frankly, sometimes. It's for me, it's what I always say is you are trying to plan the plan to plan the plan. So this is, I've actually seen that. I have people kind of trying to plan how they will then gather the information to make the plan to then build the product. So it's planning to plan the plan. That is a huge waste of time. I can totally understand where that comes from. And it's not that people don't get that. This is probably what you see in corporations and in teams. People understand that spending lots of time to come up with detailed, optimized with plans that are perfect is not the way to success. I bet all the people around you understand that. So it's not on an intellectual level that it doesn't work. They understand it, but they still don't do it. And the question I want to ponder today with you is, why? Why? If they know it doesn't work, especially in a complex world where we need a lot of agility and we should only have a rough plan and then go with that and start building from day one, And people understand that. They see the success stories. They understand the logic behind it. Why? Why in all the world do they still insist on planning the plan? Why do they still spend so much time optimizing plans, synchronizing plans, reworking plans to make sure nothing goes wrong? Or at least nothing goes wrong. I think that's an illusion that nobody has, but that at least you only some things will go wrong and you have most cases covered. Why do they still do that? If they know on an intellectual level, smart people around you, they know it doesn't work. And still, they do it. Why? And the question that comes after the why is, how can we help them fix it? How can we help them plan in a way that creates more value for the business and for the customers? And a traditional approach when consultants come in is they say, oh, you got to scrap that big upfront planning. It's bad. You don't do that big upfront planning. I've probably been guilty of that a few times, coming in and telling them it's not good. And then they say, yes, but we cannot stop it. Some say, especially engineers, I can say that, I'm an engineer myself. Engineers have a tendency to kind of want to really have control and plan things in detail. So it's more that deterministic approach. It's not the chaos theory. It's like meteorologists for the weather have been trying to do for a long time. They thought if they only can detect certain data like pressure, temperature, humidity, if they can track that enough and get enough detailed information, they will predict the weather. And what they found, there was actually, I think that was the beginning of chaos theory, was that even if you get very close, and then there's a tiny rounding error in your input, the output can be the complete opposite of what you planned. This is the butterfly effect, what they call the butterfly effect. So if you measure everything, and then there's one butterfly on the other side of the world, flapping its wings, it can cause a storm in your region instead of a sunny day. And that's complexity. We know that. Or that's actually more than complexity. That's chaos. In the world we're living in that very complex world, no matter how much information we gather, we cannot predict the future. And the fallacy that especially we engineers fall into is that, yes, that might be true. We cannot predict the future. We can accept that. But if we only gather more data and analyze a little more, then we can get closer. We can make the corridor of the possible outcomes smaller, like the cone of uncertainty. We can close that down and narrow it down if we only have enough upfront information. And that's a fallacy. It doesn't work like that. It is not in a complex environment. That might work in a complicated environment, and even then it's hard. But in a complex environment, like the environment we have today, in most businesses, I would almost say in all businesses in all of the world, it's complex. You cannot narrow that corridor. Just one tiny thing that you missed or that you miscalculated will lead to a completely different outcome. It's not predictable. And that's the intellectual level. So smart people accept that. They understand that. The people around you, in your team, in your company, they are likely, very likely to accept that and to understand that. And still, it's hard for them to make the leap to planning less and starting earlier, starting to build something earlier, I should say. And the The reason why that happens doesn't have so much to do with complexity or with chaos theory or with planning. It has to do with culture and with fear. The reason why they still cannot let go of big upfront planning and why they waste a lot of time, why the people around you waste a lot of time planning a lot, is fear. They know they cannot predict the future. They know no plan survives first contact with reality. We know that. Still, we hang on to that plan. And we do that because, and here it comes, we fear that we are blamed if something does not go according to plan, or if something goes wrong or fails. Maybe a product owner decided to have a certain feature, then was built and it failed. Customers didn't use it. It was a waste. You just maybe delete it again, or even worse, leave it in there. It just was, it failed. You tried to optimize your registration process. You tried to, optimize how your cars detect obstacles. And you failed. It was an idea, it was a nice idea, a good guess, but it failed. And now what happens? That is important. And it's different what happens in an agile company than what happens in a non-agile company. So in the non-agile company, what goes on is you build something, it failed, we look for the person to blame. Likely that stupid product owner that built that wrong feature in the first place. Why didn't they do more research? Why didn't they ask the customer more often? Why didn't they talk more deeply to the technical experts implementing it? Why did they fail? We assume they are, maybe lazy, but maybe just stupid or not professional enough for the job, or So these people usually have to fear consequences. Sometimes it's just that people make fun of them. Sometimes it's more severe. Sometimes it's really your career is on the line if you fail to deliver. Maybe not once, maybe not the first time, but if you do it 2, 3, 4, 5 times, definitely gonna see an impact on your career. And if you have to fear that, you don't want to. You don't want to take the blame. You don't want your career to take a hit. You don't want to, you don't want to be laughed at. So what you do, what we all do, is we spend more time gathering data, analyzing. That's a good point, Marcin. It's actually like blaming and all that. This is just reflexes. We don't have to be ashamed of that. It's human. It just happens. Our only job is to learn from that and overrule this reflex. To build a better culture, a bit better corporate culture. And the thing if you want to avoid the taking blame, then what you do is you gather more data, you analyze it more thoroughly, you clarify with more people around you to make sure you are not the only one of that opinion. So if the blame hits, you can say, yeah, but these people agreed. I asked them. Covering your ass is what they call it in corporate language. You try to cover your ass. You try to spread the blame, divert the blame away from you, either onto other people, or you try to divert it onto the plan. Because If you have a very detailed plan, then you can say, I did my best. You can prove you did your best. At least that's the thinking that goes on. And then you can say, I tried my best. Look at the plan. It's very detailed, very thought out, and just something very unpredictable happened. And that often works in these corporate cultures, because then you are not the one to blame. Yes, it still failed. Customers don't care, but the business doesn't care, but the people around you might care. They might say, okay, you can prove that it's not your fault. But why on all earths do we spend so much corporate money, time, and energy to prove that it was not our fault? This is not the purpose of a normal company, proving that it wasn't our fault. The solution here is very simple, actually, but hard to implement. I get that. And this is what agile companies get right. They have that solution. The solution is just not fixating on trying to blame someone, trying to find someone who's responsible, not thinking that they could have been right in the first place and they were just too lazy, too stupid, I don't know. They didn't do enough research. If we, and this is what it comes down to for me, people who know me know what's coming, but this all comes down to assuming positive intent. This is the cultural change you need to fix that wasting time in big upfront planning. Because if you assume positive intent, API, if you assume that people who fail, people who create a feature that customers don't like, people who optimize the sign-up process and they actually make it worse, people who try to optimize the way you paint your cars and you have to throw a lot of them away and it doesn't help. Once you can assume that these people weren't stupid or too lazy to do more upfront investigation and gathering of information and analysis and synchronizing with everybody, once you can distance yourself from that and can just assume that these people did the best they could, probably even more, they pushed the limits. This is often why mistakes happen. This is often where things go wrong. If you push the limits, but this is also the only thing, this is the only way to make progress and to be innovative and to be high performing. You are not high performing if you always stay like in the medium range of your abilities. You are high performing if you constantly work on the upper range of your abilities. So to extend them a little bit every day. Growth mindset. You might have heard that. Growth mindset. But mistakes happen at that. And then there's the reality that we just cannot predict what will happen, no matter how detailed we plan. So assuming that it's not the fault of the person or their flawed plan or too little planning can create a culture in which failing, building the wrong feature, making a wrong decision, having your plan fail is not a bad thing. And yes, it's actually simple. You just have to reframe it. We are not talking about the big mistakes. There are different techniques in agility. In other places, I talk a lot about that, how we can mitigate the blast radius of a mistake or of a problem or of a plan going wrong. We can do that. So then it's really, the only thing is left is our reframing of that. Were the people at fault if the plan goes wrong? If you can build a culture in which failing doesn't mean that you were bad, but failing actually means you were trying to push the limits, you were trying to do something good. You started doing something, you built something, it didn't work. And if you then can say to these people, great job, great effort, not outcome. You don't have control of the outcome, but great effort. And I assume you did the best you can. And I'm happy to help you to become even better. If you can assume that, then imagine what happens to the fear that I mentioned before. The fear of being wrong. It vanishes. Suddenly, being wrong, your plan not meeting reality, your reality not meeting your plan, as people see it. Making mistakes, failing, building the wrong feature, creating a lot of junk car parts because you messed up the paint process. You tried to optimize it, but you messed it up. That can all be seen without fear, but as a positive thing, or at least as a neutral thing. That's just part of work and a life. Then, if we don't have to fear that, and the fear vanishes, people will suddenly feel less inclined to come up with a perfect, optimal, finalized plan. This is when people will finally not just understand it on an intellectual level, but also on an emotional level and in the actions they do. They will actually reduce planning to the minimum that is sensible, that is economically the right thing to do. The minimum amount of planning you need, but not overdo it. So this is the key to shortening your planning. And I know that can last for months with hundreds of people. I don't want to even calculate how much that costs in my head, because it would make me crazy. And I see that in many companies. In many companies. And again, it's not bad. It's a natural urge, I feel, to wanting to avoid being blamed, being laughed at. And this is why it's so important for leaders, for coaches, and for leaders in companies to create that culture in which you don't have to fear mistakes and don't have to fear that your plan is wrong. This is the only way to take away or to optimize the planning initially, to prevent people from over planning just to cover their asses because they are afraid. Take away that fear. And how you can do that is just by modeling the behavior. If someone messes up, if they made a decision for a feature, for something, a project, they made a plan, a rough plan, and then it turns out they fail. And maybe that could have been prevented by analyzing more and planning more thoroughly initially. But hey, in retrospect, we always know. In retrospect, it's easy to see. But where were these people when the plan was created? Okay. So when something like that happens, leaders need to jump in and need to praise these persons, not blame them, not tell them, oh yeah, we're not going to punish you, but yeah, you messed up here. But applaud them. Say thank you. This is an example of the effort we want to see. Take this person who just failed and the plan didn't work. Take this person as an example. Tell that to all your employees around you, to all the people in your department. This is the example I want to see. Focus on the effort. Assume that people had positive intentions. Praise the effort. And you will see that your team, your department, your whole company will become more high performing. It will become a high performing company. But you have to change that culture. You have to reframe how you deal with plans going wrong, with mistakes happening, with wrong decisions. And that's, I mean, it's easy to say, it's hard to implement. I know that. The trick here is actually, as I said, that leaders go first. Leaders have to model that. And one thing that comes to my mind is a picture that I have in my mind sometimes for how you can see that culture is when you look at SpaceX and they test another rocket and the thing blows up. What happens in the control room? I mean, at NASA, what would happen at NASA? Let's contrast that. At NASA, if the thing blows up, it will probably be stern faces, or we have to find out what went wrong so we can optimize and learn from that. There are great people at NASA, but it's just a different culture. And it has reasons. It's not, I mean, it's a government agency, so that's a whole different topic. And at SpaceX, when that rocket explodes, what do you see? What do you see? You see cheers erupting. People say, yay, it exploded spectacularly. Did you see how great that looked? Amazing. And you see the CEO cheering with them. Not trying to find the person to blame. I mean, yes, I know Elon Musk has a history of trying to find people to blame for something, so let's not talk about that and that figure. I just want to talk about this glimpse into a corporate culture that doesn't fear mistakes. And this helps you to move fast. A culture where you celebrate mistakes. This helps you, or at least accept mistakes. Praise them initially to make sure mistakes are nothing to fear. Then you will reduce the big upfront planning. And people will finally stop finalizing the plan. They will just do a minimum planning and then go with it. A technique that Kimberly Weefling taught me is that you actually set a goal of making at least 3 mistakes a day. And then, once you make a mistake, or once anyone makes a mistake, what you do is you cheer. You say, yay, mistake! Everyone on the team. You just agree, whenever someone makes a mistake, however stupid, however important, however impactful, you say, yay, mistake! Okay, you don't do that if people get hurt, okay? Not talking about that kind of mistakes. And again, there are techniques to prevent, to mitigate the blast radius of a problem or of a decision going wrong. But we are talking about the day-to-day stuff we have in business, where just plans didn't work out or where we just made a decision and it turned out wrong. So then cheer for that. Yay, mistake. If you really do that all the time, it takes the fear out of that whole thing. It takes the gravity out of being blamed, fearing consequences. Oh yeah, that's a nice calculation. Thanks, Marcin. 3 mistakes a day are 100 lessons a month. Yeah, and if you kind of, you could point some attention to mistakes that way. Of course, if you celebrate them. But you slowly reframe the culture and how you view mistakes. They are nothing to be avoided. You cannot avoid them, however thoroughly you plan, however good your intentions are. So accept them and use them for learning. Mitigate the severe mistakes, yes. Mitigate something, a big plant blowing up or people getting hurt. Yes, please mitigate that. There are techniques. Also, many agile techniques that help you do that. Mitigating the blast radius. But for the day-to-day mistakes of just being wrong in planning, the reality not meeting your plan, cheer for them. And you will change the culture. You will slowly change the culture. And that cultural change, removing the fear, will then lead to teams spending less time in big upfront plannings. And just imagine, I don't know, maybe an agile release train, 100 people planning for 3 months. I don't want to calculate. Planning for 6 months, for 9 months before they start. These are insane amounts of money. And it's probably much less money you waste by building the wrong thing every once in a while. Especially if you mitigate the blast radius with agile techniques. Like test-driven development, like short iteration cycles, and so on. You can save money on that. SpaceX saves money on these rockets that blow up. It would cost them more to not have them blow up. Okay? So, reframe how you see mistakes, how you see plans going wrong, and reality not meeting your plan. And then you will reduce the time spent planning. This is the big lesson I made the point for today's live session. And again, this on my newsletter, the Agile Compass, and I have an article scheduled to go out in the next few weeks precisely on that topic. Just repeating the points if you want to read into it. About let me quickly check what the title is. Oh, I don't have the final title yet. The working title is Finalizing the Plan. The big oxymoron. And it's just, yes, we all understand that on an intellectual level, or not all, most of us can understand that on an intellectual level. The challenge for coaches and leaders is to actually change that culture so that it's not only understood intellectually, but that it's also done, that they actually plan less and move faster. Yeah. So if you're interested in that, sign up for the Agile Compass. If you already have that and you want to dive deeper, I do the Agile Coach Education Program again. I offer that again this year, the Agile Coach Education Program 2024. And you can find that on my website or just let me know, the ACE program, if you're interested in that. This is for leaders, for Agile coaches, or for Scrum Masters who want to take the next career step. And it dives into all these techniques, not only how it works in theory, but also the techniques, how to make it happen, how to really help, for example, companies reduce the big upfront planning. So if you're interested in that, that's a 6-month program with sessions every week in the evening. So if you're interested in that, check it out. You will find it if you look for it. And up until then, yes, you might also get a lot of value out of the articles, because I spent significant time now writing these articles with sources, with links, and with details and practical tips how to actually get it done on the Agile Compass, on the newsletter. That was my session today, my spontaneous session without planning it, on planning the plan, finalizing the plan, and that it's not, how that even if we understand that big upfront planning is not working in most environments, how do we get people to actually not do it? Because often they understand it, but they can't do it. And I hope I could give a few tips, a few insights on the mechanics, how that works, why people do big upfront planning, and how you can help them to reduce it and move faster, start building earlier. The core message is assuming positive intent. API. And with that, I'll leave you for now. For me, it's time for lunch now. I will have lunch for you. Have a great day wherever you are, and see you on the Agile Compass, and maybe see you next time in the next live session here. Thank you. And thanks for the comments.